Hi, this is Barry Brennan. I'm going to talk to my public speaking class about how to organize your speech or methods for organizing your speech. And this is the first time we're going to pretty much talk about how do you put that speech together. It's not an essay. You actually will be kind of outlining it, and we'll talk about outlining in another lecture. But let's kind of look at what does a speech look like? What does it need? It's not as mysterious as you might think it is. It's actually a lot like an essay in terms of needing an introduction, conclusion, and there's a body in there of your main points and how you develop them, but it doesn't look like an essay. Okay, that's a key. It doesn't look like an essay. It's not going to sound like an essay because an essay is word for word, and we don't talk word for word. When we talk conversationally, or what we're looking at is the practice of extemporaneous speech, then we're trying to have a more conversational way of communicating with people. So you're actually more engaging. Anytime students read their speech to us, we get bored and we just want to go to sleep. Even the teacher wants to go to sleep because being read to us is monotonous. Your voice even sounds monotonous. You're not really engaged with the text. You're really just reading to us. And that kind of monotonous adds to not engaging with your audience, and you oftentimes lack eye contact as well. So that's going to make more sense as we move on, but let's talk about, I'm going to pull up this PowerPoint, and here we are. So we're going to talk about speech organization, and we're going to break this up in two different PowerPoints, but let's start with this. So here we are, speech organization. The general structure of the speech. Now, of a general speech, has some kind of introduction, and we'll talk more about exactly what that introduction looks like. Has an introduction, there's a body, right? That's all the information, all the details, and has a conclusion. That's a general speech structure. Let's break it down a little bit. With that, in the introduction, we always know what is your purpose? What do you want to get? What do you want us to get out of the speech? Is your purpose to inform us, to persuade us, to entertain us, to tell a story? What is your purpose? What's your main reason? Do you want us to be more educated or be more aware about a social issue? Do you want us to get to know you better, understand you better? You know, that your next speech is a personal symbol speech. Do you want us to get to know you a little bit better? What is that? Okay, and usually then we have main points. There's a reason why we focus on having three main points. One is you can develop them well enough in a speech. There's that. And people can only hold their attention, can only hold so much information in their mind. And three is like a good number to remember what are the three main points. When you get to 4 and 5 main points, then we can't remember, and they can't be well developed because you have a time limit in which you give your speech. So 3 is a good amount to have main ideas about. Okay. Each single point should be treated as like a single idea. Should be able to stand alone, right? You could think of it as, let's go back to my wolves, right? So the wolves, if I broke it down, I look at wolves like, actually the way I give the talk, when I give the talk in Yosemite, I've talked about the history of wolves in the United States. So history means the background. Then I've talked about what is a wolf, like the biology of the wolf, the family unit is a wolf. And then I've talked about the current status of the wolf in the US, right? Those are like my main ideas, my main points around the topic of wolves. Each of them can stand alone, but they all revolve around that around your topic. Each point should be a declarative sentence. That means, in parallel form, means they're equal, they have equal value. So each main point has equal value to the other. And if they don't have equal value, it should be indicative to you or show you that potentially maybe that's not a main point. Maybe that's not strong enough. Maybe that's just one of the details. Maybe it's a supporting idea that supports another main point. Okay, but parallel means they have equal in value. You have enough information to share around each main point to have equal weight in terms of even time in which you talk about that particular point in your speech. Declarative means it's an affirmative statement. Part of being a good public speaker is sounding like using your affirmative voice, that you know what you're talking about. You don't want to ask us questions. I mean, you might want to start off your speech with a rhetorical question, but you don't want to sound like maybe it's this, maybe it's that. We want to know, what is it? You're going to make a statement. Well, the wolf is endangered in the state of California. That's a statement. Rather than, the wolf's kind of endangered in the state of California. I mean, what is that? That sounds wishy-washy, right? So declarative statement means the wolf is endangered in the state of California, and the state of California, the voters in the state of California need to support measures to keep protections for the wolves, right? That's declarative statement. I'm making a statement. There's no room for interpretation. You know exactly what I mean by that. That's what I mean by declarative. Okay, supporting points. This is that supporting material, the stuff that you use to back up your points. Okay, they can be things like stories. A narrative is a story. Could be a long story. It can be facts. We want to know facts. You know, what are the statistics? What are the facts? What do we know about? If I was going to talk about trophic cascades, like I was talking about that, use that word in my last lecture. What is trophic cascades? I have to explain to you what that means, give you an example, maybe even show you a picture of what does it look like, right? That's what you mean about supporting material. Supporting points and outline. What does an outlining look like? So when you think of these as sentences, you have a main point, you're making a statement. Then you have these smaller supporting ideas. And then as you break down the smaller ideas, you have even smaller ideas to back up that idea. So the outline, the purpose of me showing you this is to show you that an outline has this kind of cascading feel to it. So all of this stuff, these are small pieces of information, all leading to this large piece of information, or this large concept. You with me? And remember, your big concept is your topic. And then you would have a main point, these supporting points, and you would use Roman numerals. I am going to ask you to try to use Roman numerals because you should know how to make an outline. But as long as this is cascading in this way, you will have done the outline format. I will most likely accept bullet points as well. But it has to be cascading like this, and it cannot be an essay. So that's just kind of an introduction. And I'm actually going to give you a template that you can use for your outlines. Okay, you can get as small as this. Most of you are not going to get this small. You'll probably get here. Okay, transition. So with public speaking, we don't know you're moving from any point from one point to another without you telling us. So if I just launched into my lecture and I didn't like introduce what I was going to talk about, you'd be like, oh, what is she talking about? I just started talking, right? So as you move from one point to the next, oftentimes it's good to reiterate that, okay, I've now just discussed the history of wolves in the United States, and I've given you a good understanding of why it's important that we know this history. Let's talk about the biology of wolves. What does the wolf look like today? How does the wolf behave in a pack? What is a pack? Pack is also known as a family unit. And then I go on with that, right? That way I've said enough so you know I've left the story of the history, and now I'm talking about a new idea within my speech. So some examples that you can use you can just use the word next. That's helpful. What they call them, the transition words or signposts. Signposts are actually words that let us know you're moving from one idea to the next. These are so important. I can't even begin to tell you how important they are. We're not reading your speech. It's not like a book. We are depending upon you to let us know that you're moving from one idea to the next. If you don't use these transitionary or signpost words, then it all seems to run together. Remember, you're counting on us listening. So listening and reading are two different things. It's a lot of work to listen. You guys know this, you're students. All right. You can use first, second, third. Let's say you want to rattle off points. Like the first important point is this. The second important point is this. The third important point is this. Or finally, you can use first, second, the last. You can say we now turn. Now that you understand, you have a good understanding of wolves and their relationship to the environment. Now let's talk about the current status of wolves today in the state of California. Right? That's a transition. I just let you know I was moving from the last thing we're just talking about, or I was just talking about, to the next thing I'm going to talk about. It's that simple. Not fancy. It's that simple. You can use, this is what I just said, now that you understand this, I'm going to talk about this. You can use finally, let's consider. That word finally lets us know that you're moving toward the end or finishing a thought. You can use the word similarly. If you're doing a speech in which you're comparing and contrasting something, that word similarly or in contrast to, in comparison, we know that you're comparing or contrasting ideas. Okay. Can't say enough about how important that is. So within the discussion of signposts and transitions, we have this thing called internal previews and internal summaries. What is that? So I want you to think of what the word preview means. Something you say before something happens. Okay, you can break it down. Pre means before, preview. An internal preview is actually something that we're going to see usually within your introduction. Right before you launch into your body of your speech, you're going to preview for us what are your main ideas. What are you going to cover today? How are you going to talk about wolves? So for me, it would be, after I've done my introduction, I would say, so today how I'm going to talk to you about wolves is I'm going to talk about the history of wolves, and I'll talk about wolves as a family unit, how they create a family unit, and then we'll discuss the current status of wolves in the United States. Okay, I just gave you a preview. That's an internal preview. An internal summary is something when you get to the end of your speech, this is generally when it's used, excuse me, is you're going to summarize. You might do it actually at the end of every main idea, but literally you really need to do this as you move into your conclusion, is you need to kind of summarize what is it you want us to remember about your speech. Internal just means it's within the body of your speech. Okay, so summarizing those key points or key ideas. Both of those things need to be in your speech. You need to have an internal preview at the beginning, and you need to have an internal summary at the end. Okay, so we've covered kind of outlining the ideas of how you put the outline together. We've talked about transitions and signpost, main ideas needing to be parallel and of equal weight, and how many you need and why. And now we've just covered internal previews and internal summaries in terms of organizing your speech. What we're going to move on to now is going to be how there are different ways you can organize your speech depending on what your topic is or your rhetorical purpose for giving the speech. And I'm going to stop here. This will be part 1, methods for organizing your speech.